It's very important that we have this conversation because this evening there are many addicts out there who are looking for help. This is a concerted effort and we seek to help. That's why we are speaking to David Ogot. He's a recovered alcoholic, a man who has struggled with alcoholism, and he won. He joins us from our City Center studio. David Ogot, thank you for joining us on KTN Prime. And you're doing this to help the young men and women out there who are looking for a way out. So at what point did you realize that there was a problem with alcoholism for you? Can you hear me, David?
Yes, I can.
All right, so I'm asking, at what point did you realize that there was a problem, you had a problem with alcoholism?
Actually, it's not easy to realize when you cross into alcoholism, unless you know the people around you and yourself, I assume, know the signs to look out for. But I would guess it started late in high school, after I finished my A-levels. And that's when it really got bad because I would sleep out. I now started sleeping out. I would disappear for days, etc. But I guess it had started around Form 3. But the time it could really be seen was just after my A-levels.
David, where and how did you get help? And for young men and women out there who are trying to look for help, where can they get help?
Actually, this is where we are having a problem. Because I was even watching those clips which have just been aired, and the question becomes, and it's what I've been asking, what is the definition of alcoholism? Because there seem to be several definitions, and we seem to be running programs and policy based on several definitions. Essentially, I say I had the privilege, some people call it misfortune, but I call it the privilege of going through several schools of thought, you know, from psychiatrists to psychologists. And at one point when really my parents had tried everything, some uncle of mine suggested witch doctors. And of course, you know, they say a drowning man clutches at straws, and my parents tried. And of course, that one also didn't work. So finally we got to a place where they use a program based on the concept or the fact that alcoholism is a disease. It's a treatable disease. Though not curable, you manage by abstaining. And that is when I actually got sober, when I got to that program. So this is why I've been asking, we need to get right back to square one and ask ourselves, what definition are we using? Because if we have defined the problem is apples, the solution we're getting is for apples, and yet the problem is grapes. And then we wonder what is happening. Why aren't we making headway? Why does the situation seem to get worse?
David, so you say this should be looked at as a treatable disease, and of course looking at the President's directive yesterday, where do we start? Assuming this is now the starting point with the people who are addicts now, where do we begin?
With all due respect to the President, and in fact, he has done more, I think, than any other president in the short time he's been here on trying to deal with this issue. But with all due respect, when you say second-generation brews, the question becomes, which are first-generation brews? And if they were not there when I was drinking, so how did that, are we trying to say that all the alcoholics in my time, before these so-called second-generation brews came, how did we get crossing to addiction? And, you know, closing down legitimate business, because people have applied, they have licenses, they have shown the processes they're using to manufacture whatever they're manufacturing, and then you suddenly overnight say, shut them down. Because there are various government agencies who should be asked. I think 2 months ago, quite a number of people died in Nakuru because of eating mutura, which was bad. Now, did you ban meat? Right now, we've been having episodes of cholera, and people clamp down, but you can't say we're going to ban food.
So, David,
so there are remedies.
David, what you're saying is that that directive may have meant well, but it's not the right direction to take.
It's not the right direction on several fronts. One, rounding up addicts. If we're saying it's a disease, then why aren't we rounding up diabetics and other people with various diseases? It's wrong ethically, it's wrong morally. it's wrong constitutionally, it's wrong on so many fronts. And then legitimate business is being shut down under that title, second generation brew, which nobody seems to be defining. Because as far as I'm concerned, ethanol, whether you're drinking the finest whiskey, vodka, or whatever, or you're drinking Moratina, Busa, ethanol is ethanol. And the more that goes into the process, the higher the cost. But everybody, whether you're drinking Busa, Moratina, the finest Scotch whiskey, or whatever, we're all drinking the same thing. So when you shut down legitimate business, you are rounding up addicts, and at the face of it, Chang'aa is illegal, though technically the law says it's legal. But the structures haven't been put in place. So if you are caught drinking it or brewing it, so you see, it's a whole mishmash. I would like to give an example. Last year on my vehicle, the company vehicle, the fellow who fixes my punchers told me, Mzee, this thing, you need a new tube because there's no tube remaining. What you have here is a patchwork of patches. So we have some laws which were there, then something happens because the definition was wrong, so we patch them up in the name of amendments, and we have patched and patched and patched and patched. There's no tube remaining.
David, finally, before I let you go, so what's the way forward? How do we deal with this from your perspective?
Again, I will ask what I asked the president last year on a different show on this station, that please sit down, get some people together, let's go right back to the drawing board and define what is the problem. We have a wrong definition, so the solutions are all not going to work. We are defining the problem is apples, the problem is grapes. We need to sit down, and it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science.